LGBTIQ+. Asimismo, busca visibilizar y promover la atención de las necesidades de las mujeres lesbianas, bisexuales, transgéneros y queer en la industria marítima. El moderador de este panel es el señor Pau González. Les cuento un poco sobre él. Cofundador de Hombres Trans de Panamá, cofundador de la Asociación de Padres, Familiares y Amigos por la Diversidad en Panamá, asistente ejecutivo en la empresa de bienes y raíces Phillips James Realty and the Panama Link, administrador de propiedades en Panama Management. Y además es intérprete médico en hospitales de los Estados Unidos con la empresa Voice Global. Bienvenido, Pau.
Gracias. Good afternoon. My name is Pau, and my pronouns are he, him. I want to thank Gustavo and everyone behind this event for all the work that has been done to make this possible. Our next panel is a panel that has 3 objectives. I was told that we only have 45 minutes, so I will make my best to keep that time. Objective 1, to share best practices and successful experiences of including women in NP and the maritime sector, with the purpose of evaluating the replicability of these strategies for the inclusion of LGBTQI+ individuals within the industry. Objective 2, to identify and raise awareness about the main challenges and barriers faced by women in the maritime industry, especially those who identify as LGBTQI+, and discuss possible solutions to overcome them. Objective 3, to raise awareness within the maritime industry about the importance of inclusion and visibility of all women, including those who are part of the LGBTQI+ community, at all levels and areas of work. This panel aims to evaluate the inclusive process of women within the maritime industry with the intention of analyzing their application from an LGBTQI+ perspective. Additionally, it seeks to raise awareness and promote attention to the needs of lesbian, bisexual, transgender, and queer women in the maritime industry. Our first panelist is Dr. Momoko Kitada. Dr. Momoko Kitada is a former seafarer and serves as full professor at World Maritime University. She has 18 years of research experience in gender issues in the maritime and ocean sectors with a good track record of publications in this area. Dr. Kitada teaches subjects in maritime education and training and maritime energy management. Dr. Kitada leads WMU's collaboration efforts with the IMO in terms of its Women in Maritime program, including regional women in maritime associations, as well as the joint evaluation and audit of IMO activities on gender equality. She has served as the secretary of the WMU Women's Association since 2014. Dr. Kitada is leading several research projects such as Empowering Women in the Decade of Ocean Science for Sustainable Development and Transport 2040, Future of Work, among others. She is certified ILO's Participatory Gender Audit Facilitator and a certified monitoring and evaluation expert. Let's give a round of applause and let's welcome Dr. Momoko Kitada. Our next panelist is Jessica Fenn Samuelsen. Jessica has been a full-time trade union official in the cruise and international ferry section of the Norwegian Seafarers Union since 2016. Before that, she was lead on global projects in the docker section at the International Transport Workers Federation. Her current role involves case handling, ship visits, and training for the union seminars for cruise ship workers. She is responsible for communications and equalities in the team. The Norwegian Seafarers Union is an active member of the ITF's Women's Committee. Jessica has an HND in journalism and a master's degree in labor and trade union studies. Let's give a round of applause and let's welcome Jessica Fenn Samuelsen. Our next panelist is Beatriz Torrez. She's going to be joining us virtually. She was born in Bolivia in 1985. She has lived in Panama City since 2008. In 2005, she began her professional career in the field of logistics and multimodal transport. She took her first steps as a member of the commercial department of a cargo agency where she learned about the logistic needs of importers and exporters, not only in Bolivia, but throughout Latin America. When she began working in Panama, she improved the financial growth of the company, which became a benchmark in the cities of Panama, Colón, and David. Her professional approach is based on leaving a legacy for young people completing their higher education, employing them from the stage of professional practice, and providing them with the necessary tools for their growth in the world of work. She has founded companies in Panama, including Cargo Agency and an integral logistics corporation in which she holds the position of CEO. She studied foreign trade and international business at Universidad Real de la Cámara de Comercio, La Paz, Bolivia. She has a postgraduate degree in leadership skills and a master's degree in ontological coaching. Let's give a round of applause and let's welcome Beatriz Torrez Ticona. There is an ample evidence that investing in women in the most effective way to lift communities, companies, and even countries. Countries with more gender equality have better economic growth. Companies with more women leaders perform better. Peace agreements that include women are more durable. Parliaments with more women enact more legislation on key social issues such as health, education, anti-discrimination, and child support. The evidence is clear. Equality for women means progress for all. Today, women represent only 1.2% of the global seafarer workforce as the 2021 Seafarer Workforce Report. This represents a positive trend in gender balance, with the report estimating 24,059 women serving as seafarers, which is a 45.8% increase compared with the 2015 report. If we are to reach our people, all people, if we are to remain connected, we must understand that telling of one's stories provides a meaningful example, a way for folks to identify and connect. This is a quote from one of my favorite authors, Bell Hooks. To start, we'll start in the order of Beatriz, Jessica, and Dr. Momoko. And the first question is, how have maritime companies successfully promoted diversity and inclusion of women in the industry? And what strategies could be implemented to include the LGBTQI+ population?
Thanks, Paul. Hello, everybody. It's really amazing for me to be here with you. For this question, I prefer to answer in Spanish. Gracias. Gracias, Paul. Creo que es importante reconocer que la industria marítima ha crecido y sigue creciendo a pasos agigantados. Yo empecé mi carrera, como bien lo menciona Paul, en Bolivia, en un ambiente prácticamente dominado por el sector masculino, donde no tenemos muchas posibilidades de conocer a gran cantidad la industria marítima, ya que Bolivia no tiene puertos. Y por supuesto, solamente hay 2 líneas navieras que sirven el servicio del territorio nacional en Bolivia. Claro que me fue complicado a mí, desde mi experiencia, tener un poco más de relación con la industria marítima, conocerla de lleno y empezar a comprender este mundo tan apasionante. Y por supuesto, cuando llego a Panamá, veo una industria completamente diversa en todos los sentidos. En un sentido magnífico, donde todos podían entender lo que es la logística, el movimiento portuario, el transporte internacional. Y por supuesto, me cautivé mucho más por las posibilidades que existían de decir yo existo. Y creo que este evento nos muestra todo lo que podemos hacer desde la simple circunstancia de estar presentes el día de hoy. Tengo entendido de que en nuestra audiencia tenemos un 45% de mujeres en el público. Y creo que es un gran logro poder ver que a partir de eventos como este nos brindan la oportunidad de tener esa voz, de tener esta oportunidad. Por ejemplo, ahora yo me encuentro en Madrid. Por situaciones personales, no pude llegar a Panamá. Y por supuesto, la tecnología también nos da esta oportunidad de que también yo pueda decir en este momento, yo existo y puedo estar en este evento compartiendo mis vivencias con ustedes. Creo que hay muchas alternativas de decir, soy inclusivo, pero ¿realmente se está dando esa oportunidad? Desde mi vivencia como mujer en el sector marítimo, predominado por el sector masculino, me ha sido complicado y he tenido que ir abriendo camino, rompiendo barreras, traspasando fronteras y rompiendo techos de cristal, por supuesto, para poder darme el lugar que tengo hoy. Y creo que de eso se trata, que las compañías volteen a ver qué oportunidades puedo dar desde el alto mando, no solamente a los jóvenes, no solamente a los adultos mayores, no solamente a las mujeres, sino también a la comunidad LGBTIQ+. Y creo que es una gran oportunidad de tener una voz desde la experiencia que ya nos tocó vivir. Y por supuesto, les puedo decir que mi experiencia ha sido siempre de salir a la calle con el traje puesto, con el traje de guerra, porque sabía que no iba a ser sencillo. Por supuesto, soy diferente. Y lo vi desde el primer momento cuando en la escuela le pregunté a mi papá, ¿por qué soy diferente a los demás niños de la escuela? Y él desde ese entonces me programó y me dijo porque yo iba a brillar, porque yo iba a ser diferente e iba a hacer las cosas de una manera completamente distinta, pero mejor. Y creo que desde ahí, desde esa programación que tuve, empezó el cambio en mi vida. Ahora bien, ¿a qué voy con esto? Las compañías debemos voltear a ver qué quiero yo con los colaboradores que estoy contratando el día de hoy. ¿Realmente los quiero someter a un sistema o les quiero dar una oportunidad de brillar? Y creo que los que somos empresarios tenemos esa gran oportunidad de ver a la gente brillar. Y creo que la gran oportunidad tiene Panamá, por ser un crisol de razas y una cantidad de personas diferentes haciendo algo desde la pasión, que realmente es el sector logístico, marítimo y portuario.
Definitivamente has mencionado algo muy importante de lo cual quiero rescatar. Yo creo que del movimiento de mujeres y sus derechos, la comunidad LGBT podemos aprender muchísimo. Y abrir caminos no es fácil, pero creo que juntos podemos lograr acciones concretas que nos lleven a un mundo que sea realmente inclusivo. Same question for Jessica.
Is it working?
Yes.
Yeah. I just want to say thank you to everybody so far. It's just been so positive, and I promised that I would answer the questions in a positive way. Sadly, Pal is right that even though the representation of women amongst seafarers has increased by almost 50% since 2015, we still only make up under 2% of the nearly 2 million seafarers out there in the world. So we have a long way to go if we want to see the world reflected back in the industry of the maritime industry. But I wanted to say something about why this is. I don't think it's because the maritime industry is particularly nasty. I think it's a historic hangover. It's traditionally been men who took up going to sea at a very young age. It becomes a very masculine environment. And Mikkel described the stereotypes, and those gender stereotypes still exist. So the stereotype that men are strong, stronger than women, more resilient, men don't get lonely, men can be away from home for longer periods of time. I think the difference between the perception of a woman who works away from her home and a man who does the same is really significant. And this affects us in the LGBTQ plus community as well, because gender stereotypes are rife, you know? And this is, I think, the overarching message is that these gender stereotypes exist in the maritime industry, and it's a really important thing that we need to change. I wrote down that a good team is made up of many people with different talents. Yeah, if you're a good leader, you pick a good team with different talents, and men and women and everybody is different, and we've got different skills, so that's really important to remember. We have the Maritime Labour Convention. I was really shocked when I found out that it had only existed since 2006, because it lays out the basic standards and living conditions, working conditions for seafarers. I'm just imagining a world of piracy before this. Importantly for women, it made the hotel and catering jobs in maritime included as seafarers. I work in the cruise section, and we have a bit more representation of women, almost 25%. But most of those jobs that women do are in cabin cleaning and traditionally more hospitality. And they're not the most well paid, and they're not the most technical. I just wanted to tell a quick story, because there are some changes that have been made that have helped women get on in the maritime industry. I lived in South Africa a long time ago when I was younger, and when the new government came in South Africa, there was a racist government in South Africa. And in 1994, the government, it consisted of hundreds of white men. The new government came, and they were elected from all different sectors of South African society, including women. But they had a problem, because the South African Parliament building didn't have any women's toilets. There was one toilet in the basement for the cleaner, and so they had to make structural adjustments in the South African Parliament building. And I know that in the maritime industry, these things have been really important. For example, personal protective equipment. Experiments have been done on this one-size-fits-all. Large overalls that don't fit women's bodies get caught in machinery. Safety goggles that are built for smaller heads have gaps and therefore don't do the job that they were made to do. And then adjustments for women's bodies, like accepting that we menstruate and making adjustments for that. Get pregnant, we have menopause. And so I think practical changes have been made in the maritime industry in that regard, and that's really important. And women from different cultural backgrounds being able to go to sea is really encouraging as well. I think, I was just going to mention, seeing as you mentioned a great writer, there's a fantastic book by a woman called Caroline Criado Perez. It's called Invisible Women, and it's about the world of data collection and how the world is based on the male body. And basically, if women, who said earlier, if we're not about us, it's about us? Yeah. But basically, it shows that all the data collection, the fact that the phones are made for bigger hands, the crash test dummies are made for bigger bodies. It's a really interesting book, and I recommend it. But I think those are some of the really important changes, but it's the cultural change that really needs to happen next. Yeah.
Definitely. I agree 100% with you on that. Dr. Momoko, please, if you can answer the same question. How have maritime companies successfully promoted diversity and inclusion of women in the industry, and what strategies could be implemented to include the LGBTQI plus population?
I think also, thank you very much. And first of all, thank you, Gustavo and his team, his friends, everyone, to organizing this conference. And it's my really a privilege. I wouldn't be able to come and speak to you without your support. I'm trained as a woman seafarer, having a seafaring husband, having a separated life, between Japan and Sweden, where I work. And in these kind of situations, I often find that, okay, I'm probably not a normal woman or normal person. And this is actually made me think a bit closer to the LGBTQI plus community, because it's like kind of people judge me that you're not normal. And they also trying to teach me how to be a proper woman. And that is very funny. But I really also like to have different opinions. My husband is very sexist, and I also appreciate that kind of partner. Luckily, try not to change him. That's not my life goal, but at least I acknowledge the different opinions exist, different approaches, different theories, different logics exist, and there is no right or wrong, but it's just a kind of differences. And I think feminist approach is very much embracing these differences. So not like saying that you are right or I'm right. It's just a kind of differences. And of course, there is a justice that we believe, And in the maritime industries, it's really a huge, strong masculinity exists, which is super difficult. And I think also what Jessica mentioned a bit about the bodies. So our those masculinity, femininities are not separated from our bodies. So it's not just our gender identities, where how we think about we are women or men or something else, but also it is associated to our bodies, what kind of body we have, which actually makes very complicated. So as soon as as a woman, because this is a women panel, so as women, it's kind of very obvious that whether you believe what you have a woman's body, and then you are on a ship, and it's very obvious, and you are a minority, you are something different, and this kind of ambiguity or something new or something alien makes a lot of people with a traditional thinking very difficult to how to deal with it. And they don't need to really scare about women just to suddenly be on board, but because they don't know how to work with them. And this is also true because I suppose that the LGBTQI plus seafarers or maritime professionals who identify themselves slightly different from what people to think as normal, and it is okay, but since their bodies are somehow associated to male or female, and then there is some kind of different kind of mind or identity, and this actually creates a very difficult situations. And then if the people face some kind of, that's something they don't know so much about, then they started to feel afraid of that. They don't know. But I think this is one of the very big challenges that we have. But then new generations are slightly more open, as we said, but I hope I can also speak a little bit more about the new generation for the another questions or opportunities. Thank you.
No, thank you so much. And one of the things you mentioned, I think it's important. A lot of times in the societies that we grow up in, people think that there is only one way of being male and one way of being female, and I think that there is no such thing. I mean, everybody should have the freedom to express themselves and be themselves. And the subject about the bathrooms, I think it's important because, I can only imagine that a couple of years ago, many years ago, maybe women in the maritime sector wouldn't have believed that we would have a panel with experts that are women sitting here. And I think that gives hope that, it takes time, but process can be made, and it takes each one of us to be part of that change that we want to see in the world. Jessica, I wanted to ask you the next question. What steps are being taken to promote diversity and inclusion within the maritime sector?
Thanks. I was really looking forward to answering this one. I work for a union, and I like to think that it's our job to promote diversity and inclusion. So I feel very lucky to be able to speak about it. The Maritime Labour Convention and all the other maritime laws that are in place. The trade union movement's played a really big role. Asif spoke about that, and the ITF. And we have collective bargaining agreements. Most of the large cruise companies we have agreements with. All of our agreements have very specific clauses on bullying, harassment, and discrimination. They do include sexual orientation, and as we renegotiate recently, they will also include gender identity. They're very specific about what behaviors are acceptable and what is not acceptable, and very clear descriptions about how to deal with it. I think the key is to, I think you picked up on that, on how we deal with disputes, because we've got great agreements, we have the tools, but how do we use them? And a lot of the time, on a cruise ship, for example, there are 70 different nationalities. That means like we've got 30 different religions, we've got different cultures, traditions, expectations of behavior. I do a lot of training with seafarers, and I always show them the Norwegian hug, like this, which is very different from other cultures. So even the way that we speak to each other and touch each other can cause kind of misunderstanding. And part of the training I do on bullying and harassment is to kind of take a step back and make sure we understand that we are different, first of all. Part of my job is to visit ships and talk to seafarers and do these seminars. And it's quite sad, actually, how many seafarers don't know that they have a union. They don't know that there is a collective bargaining agreement there, and they don't know what their rights are, even though they've been in place for many years. So it's our job to keep explaining to seafarers that they are there and how to use them. But I do think employers need to play a bigger role. We are based on land. We do visit ships and we have some contact. But when we go to those ships, we don't see visible posters about the union and about seafarers' rights. And that's something we're always pressing for, because the more you know that you have these rights, the more likely you are to use them. The other thing, well, I wanted to be positive, like I said. So we have achieved maternity leave. There's 12 weeks maternity leave for seafarers working under our agreements. We've managed to stop compulsory pregnancy testing for female seafarers, which is obviously really discriminatory because you can be working and pregnant. And the adaptations to the safety equipment and so on. And the discrimination clauses. But again, it's how we use those rights and what we do with them. I think on a wider scale, the whole idea of temporary contracts. I'm a bit thirsty, hang on. Thank you. So the terms and conditions that seafarers work under really affect their lifestyle and how they relate to disputes at work. So we find often that seafarers are nervous. They don't want to report illness. They don't want to report bullying and harassment because they don't want to lose their job. And if they know that there is a possibility that once their contract's finished, they may not get another one, this makes our job really, really difficult. So I think the industry as a whole has to improve the conditions of workers in the whole before anything will change. Just on the statistics, even in cruise where we have anecdotal evidence from seafarers who say actually life is better for them at sea. It's a safer environment. As I said, there's a lot more women, it's a lot more diverse, and some of our seafarers come from countries where it's still illegal to be gay, the culture is very oppressive, and so they have this period of time on board which is a lot more liberating. So that's quite sad. The 2%, under 2% of seafarers who are women, according to some research done by some Swedish researchers, they did, anyway, they discovered that 50% of the women working at sea had suffered sexual harassment or sexual violence, which is pretty shocking if you think about the limited number of seafarers there, yeah. So I think the message I would like to give is we have the tools. There are things in place, but we need to use them and feel safe to do so. Yeah.
Thank you so much. And in that same line, Dr. Momoko, would you like to share the new pilot project, Diversity at Sea, led by the Global Maritime Forum, which WMU is collaborating with as knowledge partner? And also, how do you see the role of educational institutions to attract and retain women in the maritime sector?
Thank you, Paul. Yes, so I would also like to talk about one, because we are trying to share some good practices from the industry about the women, promotion of women. So in this case, I would like to also introduce one new project that WMU is as part of the knowledge partner. And this is the Diversity at Sea, part of the All Aboard Alliance, led by the Global Maritime Forum based in Copenhagen, Denmark. And this All Aboard Alliance consists of the 35 very well-known world-leading shipping companies and crewing agencies. And this is a kind of really, there's a lot of great initiatives from the different maritime stakeholders, but then it's a kind of fragmented and there is not much well coordinated sometimes, like IDF does, which is really great. But from the shipping companies and all these, the industries, they just come together with this leadership of Global Maritime Forum, and then they actually started to think about how can we make the shipboard workplace better and good for women. And just started with that questions, and then really kind of trying to think about good ideas. So not like starting from the problem, but trying to think about it, more ideas and innovative things. So it's almost like you are thinking about someone that you want to think about what kind of birthday present to buy to make somebody's happy, or trying to make somebody's feeling comfortable and then also be appreciated and, surprised possibly. So it's a kind of mentality, very positive notes, a lot of ideas, and then we realized that the industry actually knows a lot about seafarers, and they also have a lot of know-how about what are the challenges, but they have never really been able to test that ideas. So this project is trying to come up with some good ideas and do some pilot, and then try and test. Some of those ideas are very much not only applicable for women, but it's for all seafarers. So just to give one small example is that let's try to make the seafarers to take turns to take holidays during the Christmas time. Because if one seafarer is missing the Christmas every year because of the by chance the shift, and it's going to be very difficult. And not seeing the family at a certain time of the year. So trying to make some rotation. So this is actually not about women, it's actually for everyone. So when we actually start thinking about gender equality and diversity and try to make the seafarers and everybody's happy, then it's suddenly becoming everybody's business. And this is a really, really nice thing to, it's a kind of upside down kind of thinking, but this is great to see that the industry is now actually working on that. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that. Yeah. And is that online so people can actually find it? Yeah, exactly. Perfect. And sorry, just very quickly that I would, explain about the education part. Sorry. Yes. For the education, I think the previous panel also confirmed that the importance of education. For me, that there is every opportunity that we can talk about gender and mainstreaming. About when we talk about in our case that research methodology or like even a decarbonization or any technical subject, but there is always an explanation from the feminist viewpoint to say that why the shipping companies are emitting and even those carbon trade and all these kind of mechanisms are still very much based on the business oriented, not about the people or environment. And then we can actually explain from that kind of gender perspective.
And, but very interestingly, I would say that the new generations are much more open. And I remember that about maybe 6 or 7 years ago, when I was teaching at the Maritime Education Training Specializations, there is a kind of resistance against this kind of topic, LGBTQ+I, very much. They say that, well, we can accept women, but no way, yeah? So that was 6, 7 years ago. Today, people talk about more, so this is really great. But at the same time, I can see that as soon as we started to talking about this topic, especially men started to feel uncomfortable. And this is actually showing that how often we are not talking about this topic, which we should. So this dialogue, having those conversations in every platform is very important. And I can see that actually men are the victims of these strong, hegemonic masculinities in a shipping industry. So to save everybody's, I think education has a very important role. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Now we're going to go to Beatriz. And bell hooks believe that true inclusion in the workforce is not merely about hiring individuals from diverse backgrounds, but rather creating an environment where everyone feels valued and respected. Beatriz, what actions are being taken to address the underrepresentation of women, particularly those who identify as LGBTQI+, in leadership positions in the maritime sector?
Thanks, Paul. As Jessica and Momoko mentioned, es muy importante tener en cuenta las diferentes habilidades de las personas. Todos somos diferentes, pero seguimos siendo seres humanos. Y, por ejemplo, en una anécdota personal, cuando yo empecé a trabajar y empecé a verme como gerente, y efectivamente me enviaron a Panamá, una de las condiciones, entre comillas, era no quedar embarazada. Porque claro, la ideología en ese momento de mi jefe era que podía ser menos productiva. Y por supuesto, casarme no era una posibilidad, tener un hijo mucho menos, y aún así lo hice. Y efectivamente el resultado fue que me despidieron, porque cortaba un poco las reglas que me habían impuesto. Pero eso me pudo dar la oportunidad de decidir. Yo genuinamente decidí ser madre, viviendo en un mundo 100% masculino en el sector marítimo, logístico y portuario, y teniendo un trabajo 24/7. Y de hecho, debo confesar que yo tuve a mi hijo el viernes y el día lunes ya estaba trabajando nuevamente. Y claro, mentalmente yo tenía un reto, que era ser productiva porque me habían dicho que no lo podía hacer. Entonces creo que tanto hombres, mujeres y personas de la comunidad LGBTIQ+, atravesamos diferentes situaciones que mentalmente nos pueden golpear en ciertos parámetros de nuestras vidas. Esto que nos programan y que te dicen que vas a ser menos productiva o que no puedes alcanzar a llegar a tener este cargo o que cuando lo tengas tienes que pelearte con todo el mundo porque es un entorno masculinizado, si quieres. Entonces, a partir de ahí creo que es fortalecernos y fortalecer a estas personas que van creciendo en este entorno. Hablo de estudiantes que van entrando y se van enamorando del mundo marítimo, logístico y portuario y que quieren simplemente una oportunidad para vivir esta pasión que nosotros conocemos y que prácticamente nos encanta y nos enamora todos los días. Y por supuesto creo que los puestos de liderazgo son importantes. Como líderes tenemos que reconocer que en la diversidad está la magia. Y sin diversidad no podemos avanzar. Los puntos de vista diversos son los que nos dan la oportunidad de ver cosas que no vemos individualmente. Pero ¿cómo explicamos un punto de vista? Y rescato la explicación que a veces le hago a mi hijo. Vemos un labial. Yo lo veo de este lado, ustedes lo ven de este. Esos son puntos de vista. Son puntos de vista diferentes. Y a eso se refiere todo esto. Cada uno de nosotros tenemos puntos de vista diferentes de acuerdo a cualquier circunstancia. Y sobre todo ahora, yendo al tema de la comunidad LGBTIQ+, tenemos diferentes puntos de vista, que afortunadamente las nuevas generaciones no tienen el mismo preconcepto con el cual nosotros nos hemos criado. Y creo que existe una gran oportunidad, como decía Momoko, desde la educación. Si educamos a estas nuevas generaciones a abrir las puertas a esta diversidad, vamos a generar esa magia de poder trabajar con personas diferentes, entendiendo un lenguaje diferente. Y en algún momento escuché a María Gabriela, que estuvo en los paneles iniciales como moderadora. Y claro, hay muchas cosas que nosotros obviamos, y me pasó, debo confesarlo, que dentro de la empresa teníamos una persona de la comunidad y efectivamente se hacían chistes y bromas, pero nunca podías identificar cuál era la línea de cuál es la broma pasable o la broma pesada. Y creo que desde esa educación de cómo yo puedo comunicarme con los demás, hacemos un cambio. Pero es educación. Y como líderes, como jefes, como dueños de empresa, como dueños de navieras, como personal portuario de altos rangos, debemos empezar a educarnos. No lo sabemos todo. Y el mundo está cambiando, la educación está cambiando. Y nosotros debemos empezar no a educarnos en matemáticas, en ingeniería, educarnos en skills humanos, en saber cómo nos comunicamos unos con los otros y desde dónde viene mi comunicación para con la otra persona. Y desde ahí yo creo que vamos a dar ese aporte necesario para que la sociedad viva de esa diversidad y pueda ir un paso adelante siendo inclusivos.
And I think it's important also, as you mentioned, that when women in the maritime sector may have faced obstacles and struggles, there's always a chance for opportunity and always a chance to have empathy, to look at each other as the human beings that we are, regardless of which letter of LGBTQI+ we are.
Exacto, Pau. Y creo que lo mencionas bien. Nos trae mucha oportunidad el poder ver todo lo que nos pasa como negativo, transformarlo en positivo. Y las mujeres tenemos esa habilidad. Nos das una casa, podemos hacer un hogar. Nos das un hijo y podemos hacer una familia. Entonces tenemos esa capacidad de transformar, de ser creativas. Y creo que si podemos incluir eso en nuestras compañías, podemos tener magia, sin duda alguna.
And then another question for you. In what ways does the masculine and heteronormative culture present in the maritime industry impact the experiences, well-being, and prospects of all women in the industry?
Well, big question. Creo que la masculinidad siempre está y siempre va a estar presente y es bueno que esté. La heteronormativa la vemos día a día y creo que es importante que resaltemos a aquellos hombres que empiezan a ver la diversidad desde otros ojos. La inclusión de la mujer en rangos o puestos de tomas de decisiones en el sector logístico y marítimo es importante. Y creo que a partir de ahí podemos hacer la diferencia. Yo soy parte de la red de mujeres líderes de América, que la base está en España. Y efectivamente uno dice, es una red de mujeres. Sí, el 90% eran mujeres. Ahora tenemos mayor inclusión de hombres que se han puesto en nuestros lugares. En el lugar de que como mujer, como madre, siempre estás pensando todo a la vez. Si el niño comió, si va a ir al colegio, si mandé el correo electrónico, si me contestaron, si va a salir el contenedor y vuelvo a la casa y a qué hora recojo al niño. Entonces siempre estamos uniendo ambos mundos. Y claro, el tener un apoyo en casa es supremamente importante. Y alguna vez lo escuché de una gran expositora que mencionaba que tener un equipo es importante. En la compañía, en la empresa donde trabajes, a quien lideres y tener un equipo en casa. Que este sector masculino vaya entendiendo, pero no solamente desde la lástima, pobrecita, haces muchas cosas, sino desde en qué puedo apoyar, qué puedo hacer para que esto pueda fluir. Y creo que desde ahí podemos ver las cosas desde otro punto de vista. Sin embargo, debo decirte y confesarte que muchas veces las mujeres queremos imitar un liderazgo masculinizado y vamos transformando nuestro ser femenino. Ya no llegamos a ser tan femeninas porque queremos irnos a esa imagen del liderazgo masculinizado. Y claro, porque no tenemos un ejemplo. Ahora invito a las mujeres líderes que podamos seguir abriendo puertas para las nuevas líderes que se van formando, para poder equilibrar mucho más este femenino y masculino que existe, y mucho más masculino en nuestro sector logístico y marítimo. Y por supuesto, darle la oportunidad a estas nuevas generaciones de que vean un liderazgo diferente, desde otros ojos, desde otros puntos de vista, desde otra diversidad. Yo creo que como empresas debemos abrirnos mucho más a tener los ojos y los oídos abiertos para poder escuchar y entender cómo me estoy comunicando en la compañía, cómo me estoy comunicando con mis pares y qué mensaje quiero dar, qué tipo de empresa quiero ser. Soy parte de la red de mujeres latinoamericanas del sector logístico. La base está en Panamá. Y lo que veo son micro y pequeñas empresas lideradas por mujeres que han pasado por una escuela masculina, al igual que yo, y que todo su concepto y su caja de creencias está basado en una masculinización. Entonces, nosotras empezamos a brindarles oportunidades y herramientas para que vean desde otros ojos, desde otra experiencia, cómo el ámbito logístico también puede llegar a ser femenino. También podemos llegar a vernos vulnerables, de sentirnos mal, de saber que es un día malo. No siempre tenemos que tener días buenos para decir, wow, es un buen líder. No necesariamente. También es bueno mostrarnos vulnerables, y no solamente con las personas a nuestro cargo o nuestros pares, sino también con las nuevas generaciones. Y hablo mucho de los niños o de los millennials, los centennials, que los defiendo mucho de paso, que debemos empezar a enseñarles desde la humanidad, independientemente masculino o femenino, sino desde esa humanidad que nosotros queremos transmitir. Y creo que el mensaje es claro. La masculinización existe, pero tenemos que empezar a generar líderes que lideren en femenino.
Thank you so much. Yes, of course.
I just want to make a quick comment because I did promise to be positive, but I think we have to be realistic as well. And I think one of the results of having such a masculine and kind of macho culture is violence and bullying. And if 50% of the 200 or so women who work at sea have been exposed to sexual harassment and sexual violence, it's not only just women. But I think that's a really important and scary statistic. And we've got the policies that say this is not okay, but we know that people are frightened, and we're not seeing consistent consequences. If people are frightened about reporting it, or if they report it and there's a consequence to them, or they report it and nothing happens, then it's not going to stop. And I think that's a real danger. And I've remembered I got the phrase wrong, nothing about us without us. In Norway, they passed a policy in the early 2000s to say that all boards of companies have to have 40% women. And that means that women are making decisions about women, about our lives. And we know that we don't have the data on the LGBTQ community. We need more of that so we can address our needs as well, more specifically. But, you know, this has to change because that is a really dangerous statistic to have.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. And now to wrap up, one final question for Dr. Momoko. And then I would like final remarks from each one. It would be 1 minute each because we're short of time. So, Dr. Momoko, what actions can governments and regulators take to promote the inclusion of all women in the maritime sector?
Thank you, Paul. So I was also try to be short, but okay. So this is about the question of the government and the policy regulators. So I can also give one example. For example, in the maritime sector, the Philippines is also in 2022 the global gender gap. They are 19th. Of the all total the world. So it was quite a good, significant, achievement in the kind of the Philippines is not like Nordic countries which are always occupied like Norway, Iceland, Sweden. But why is also because that they have some kind of, the policy is also there too. So one of the very interesting policies is that they have this gender and development budgeting. So this is like a gender responsive budgeting that they are already implementing. So all the government departments and agencies must have the minimum of 5% of their total annual budget for the equality program, projects, and activities. So that really helps them, even the 5% that this gender program has been sourced from the government and all agencies across the countries. And this is really one of the very good example. And also in the Philippines, this Women in the Maritime Association's office, the headquarters, because even there is a kind of good NGOs, they are always having the difficulties of having a space or access to the resources. But what they have done is that, especially at the time of the Professor Max Mejia, the next the WMU president, the designate, when he was the administrator of the Maritime Industry Administration, he decided to put those women in Maritime Philippines, the headquarter office, inside of the building, of the government building of the Maritime Industry Administration. So which actually increasing the visibility. It's not a temporary office, but it's a kind of, good, very good connection and very close, to the policymakers. So this kind of example is really showing that how the government and regulators can also help and support these gender and diversity issues. Also ratification of the policies, for example, not MLC, but also this violence and harassment conventions. Actually, the Panama is one of those not ratified, not enforced yet, but one of the 25 countries in the world that ratified. So those kind of effort is very important. And there are other things, but I will just cut in here. Thank you, Paul.
No, thank you so much. And then final remarks, Jessica and Beatriz, please.
I just want to thank Gustavo and the team and everyone for their contributions. Our union is really, really proud to be here. We're going to be signing the declaration after this. So I hope you'll all join us. Yeah. It's just really exciting to know that something is changing. Yeah, I like the idea of quotas. Yeah. But yeah, I'll see you all after. Thank you.
Beatriz, final remarks.
Thank you so much. Muchas gracias por la oportunidad de poder decir yo existo. Y creo que este evento nos da la oportunidad de no solamente mostrarnos como un colectivo, sino como personas individuales que también merecemos ser vistos, prendernos la luz y mostrarnos. Felicidades a la organización, creo que es un hito muy importante y sobre todo felicidades Panamá por haber aceptado este reto de ser los primeros en mostrar esto tan maravilloso de nuestro sector tan apasionante que es el sector logístico, marítimo y portuario. Les invito a que volteemos a ver a quien tenemos al lado. No somos iguales, somos todos diferentes, pero veamos esa diferencia desde el amor, desde esa magia que en este momento debe haber en este auditorio, de mostrarnos tan diferentes, pero a la vez pensamos tan igual. ¿Por qué no seguir haciendo esta magia? Muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias, Beatriz. Thank you so much. And as we conclude this panel, I have been reflecting myself as a trans man, how much I have learned from women, and I keep learning from them. And I think that we can all learn from each other and see each other as the human beings that we are. We must continue to challenge stereotypes and prejudices, provide education and training, and create policies and practices that promote inclusion, respect, and safe working environments for everyone. I think we all have a shared responsibility, and I encourage everyone to take action and make a commitment to advancing diversity and inclusion in the maritime industry and beyond. Thank you all for your participation in this important conversation. Thank you to the amazing panelists. It's been an honor to be your moderator. And thank you for everyone that has done this possible. And let's continue taking steps towards a more inclusive world in our daily actions. Wherever is your workspace, if you know a trans person, a non-binary person, an intersex person, you can always have a conversation and get to know them for who they are before you even pass judgment or feel like you're scared of what you're gonna find there. I think a lot of times we have fear of different people, and actually we have more in common than what we think. So thank you so much. It's been a pleasure, and thank you everyone.
Muchas gracias a los panelistas, a las panelistas de este interesante panel. El comité organizador de esta conferencia desea hacerles entrega de un reconocimiento a ustedes. Para ello invitamos a Alexander Díaz, voluntario de IXIS2, para entrega de los mismos. Agradecemos de antemano a Beatriz Torres por acompañarnos en la tarde de hoy. A la doctora Momoko Kitada. A la señora Jessica Fenn Samuelsen. Y por supuesto al moderador del panel, el señor Gonzalez. Invitamos a todo el panel, por favor, Alexander, también para la fotografía oficial del mismo. Un fuerte aplauso para el panel. Muchísimas gracias y felicidades.